Now that I've done reviews of Starfleet Academy, I thought I would recap seasons 1, 2, and 3 of Strange New Worlds before doing weekly reviews of the upcoming season 4 later this month, and then, of course, getting to 5. So, let's jump in with episode 1, aptly titled Strange New Worlds. Now, I did rewatch the entirety of season 1 and took a lot of notes, so I'm not going to have it all memorized. But we start off with Pike, who has had recent contact on the Klingon planet Boreth with a rare ore that causes temporal consciousness displacement. Lots of nice fancy words there, according to Spock. Now, I hate these time travel crystals when they were introduced in Discovery because they're just a crutch, and I just cannot believe that the Klingons, of all species, would safeguard time crystals when they are a warmongering race out for domination of the galaxy. Why wouldn't they use the time crystals to their advantage? So, it makes no sense. But in this show, these time crystals are just a prop to give Pike visions of his future that we all know from TOS. So I believe this is setting up bookends for the show. It starts with Pike coming back into service and having these visions of his future, which don't look so good. And it will end with him sacrificing himself to preserve the timeline. That was my guess from the first time I saw this first episode, so we'll see. But once we get into the plot for this first episode, I do like how they tied in the goings-on from Discovery. Warping into when the Discovery ship was warping into 600 years into the future, they left behind a noticeable event in the sky to a pre-warp planet. And those people observed it, and they were able to create warp technology from it somehow. Anyway, this is advancing their timeline way ahead of when they should have, thereby creating a problem in which Starfleet has inadvertently advanced a civilization in violation of the Prime Directive, which back in these days they called Order 1. We got 65 more orders to go. Here's another trope I hate that the show does, is when they manipulate some crew's DNA to look like an alien species. I just, we suspend our disbelief so that we believe there are ships that can go warp speed and you can beam people down and everybody in the galaxy speaks English. But the way that an injection can alter your physical form and change your organs and everything, that's just, I've always hated that trope. Now here's a real issue, a problem I have that they could have fixed. This was their golden opportunity to fix it. So I noticed that the episode starts on stardate 1739.12. But near the end, Pike has a captain's log and states it's stardate 2259.42. How many years did this episode encompass? Now, stardates pre-TNG in the TOS days were somewhat arbitrary. They just thought, put some numbers on it. They didn't want to use our current dating system, so they just made up some pretty random numbers, and the dates were not chronological. TOS had stardates from 1312 to 5943. So, this episode, if 3 seasons of Star Trek TOS encompassed 4,000 stardates, 1312 to 5943. Again, like this episode going from 1739 to 2259, it's stupidly long. It's an absolute mess. They had an opportunity here to fix stardates because starting with TNG, they were much more diligent about that. Season 1, I think, was the 41,000s. Season 2 was 42,000. Season 3 was 43,000. I'll stop there. So, yeah, they could have gone back and started at stardate 1139.2 and had every subsequent episode be 140, whatever. Uh, and there was a lot more instances of this I noticed throughout the whole first season. They totally screwed up the star dating when they could have fixed it. As you can see here, these are the episodes of season 1. Here are their star dates. This span is I don't know how long that is, but then they go to 29, then they go back to 12, then 3,000. Fix this shit. So now we have Pike mentioning Lieutenant Kirk on board. Oh, are we going to get Jimmy Boy? No, we get his brother, Sam. Retconning him earlier into Star Trek lore than when he was mentioned. Was it in Spock's brain? He was mentioned in TOS. So here we're seeing his brother before we see Jimmy Boy. So, all in all, I thought that first episode was off to a good start. Is your typical Trek episode of dealing with a pre-warp species. Rough edges, could have some improvements, especially in the star dating. But first episode is off to a good start. Episode 2, Children of the Comet, is another run-of-the-mill, straight-up Star Trek episode from the good old days. This one is about a comet heading towards a planet, but the comet is not what it seems, so, oh no, what are we going to find out? The only noteworthy part of this episode is they give a lot of backstory to Uhura, which I really appreciated. But we are seeing some liberties being taken with the Big E, the Enterprise that we all know and love. This is the Strange New Worlds captain's cabin. It's gargantuan. It's much bigger than anything we've seen in TOS. And remember, this is concurrent to the TOS timeline, so they could have, modernized it a bit from the good old days of, this is what the bridge looked like. Yeah, the bridge doesn't look like that anymore. They could have gone for some consistency, especially considering both. This is from the Star Trek Next Generation episode, Relics, where Scotty is discovered, and in Deep Space Nine, they go back in time, and it's straight up TOS. So there's a huge discrepancy between the aesthetics of this show and TOS is an understatement. I mean, I know we saw problems with it in Discovery, but here they're literally on this ship, and it looks way too modernized. I think they could have given it some nice new polishes, but tried to keep it more in line with TOS. And I know I sound really nitpicky, but every TV show should be diligent about their facts and their timelines and their chronology, especially a show that's all about science. Despite figuring out how the episode was going to end, which I try to turn my brain off when I watch shows because I want to be entertained and surprised. I saw this one coming a mile away, though. It was still a decent entry. They're still on good footing up to episode 2 so far. And now we have episode 3, Ghosts of Illyria. And I did note that the star date for this episode was before episode 1. In this episode, Pike and Spock get stranded on this planet after the other team has to evacuate back to the Enterprise. But it seems that the crew has returned with some sort of infection that's affecting them, and it seems the only cure is via Una, the first officer, who is from a genetically modified species, but she's been hiding this info because that's illegal in the Federation. Anyone remember why? Thanks, Khan, for ruining it for the rest of us. Oh yeah, and La'an here is one of the descendants of Khan, by the way. I thought that was kind of stupid. You don't have callbacks. You don't need to integrate this show into the Star Trek lore. This show is firmly Star Trek. You don't have to tie it into Khan, but they made her his great something granddaughter. I don't know. So the only good thing about revealing the truth about number 1 and the Doctor was that they just got right to it. They didn't string it along for too long. However, I don't like this storyline of the Doctor's daughter being in a transporter buffer, but at least they didn't carry that on for too much longer. Still, episode 3, they're feeling their ground, and that doesn't that's not an expression. I don't know what that means, but they're gaining their footing, getting their sea legs, whatever you want to say. It's coming together. You have to give a first season a pass and get used to it. So far so good still. Episode 4, Memento Mori. I am really liking how they are developing Pike's character. And I like his command style. He doesn't have the swagger or braggadocio of Kirk, but he has an insightful wisdom about him and is good at instilling confidence and delegating responsibility. No, I'm not giving a report on him for his promotion, but yeah, I'm digging Pike. And in this episode, I do like how they used I think this red alert symbol was introduced in the motion picture. And they have it here too. I like that touch. This episode was kind of a callback to the episode of TOS, Balance of Terror, with their submarine analogies. And it's funny considering what they do in the season finale, which we get to in just a minute or so. Now the ship is getting too close to a heat source, and the environmental systems are failing, and all the crew starts to sweat, including Spock. But why would Spock be sweating? Spock is from a desert planet. He's used to high temperatures. So I would think that by the time Spock is actually sweating, other people will be dropping heat exhaustion. So I thought, make him not sweat. Show the audience that he's Vulcan, half Vulcan. But yeah, I thought I would have, if I was writing or directing this episode, not had him sweat. But overall, this episode was really good with a lot of good character moments. So we're picking up a little bit of steam here. Episode 4, full warp ahead. First off, great title. It starts off with a very familiar scene on Vulcan. And we, the viewer, have been here before, but Spock hasn't from his timeline yet. So as we know, Spock always had an internal struggle over his half-breedism. He's half human, he's half Vulcan, he's not fully a part of either society. And this episode, that manifests in this episode as a dream of him fighting himself during Calafi, which is a marriage ceremony, I think. But it's just really anxiety over his betrothal to Pring. And while she's visiting him, during some R&R while the Enterprise is undergoing repairs. Now, here's where I like the episode, which not everybody may, but I love the body swapping. I thought that was funny. Star Trek can have humor. A good situational story with the two of them switching bodies during some mind melding, and they have to get back in each other's bodies. So it's this great slice of life of them experiencing each other's responsibilities. And I really kind of like this episode. Between the body swapping and the Enterprise bingo and the aliens who adopt the personality of anybody they're talking to, I thought this was a great episode overall. So this, the series is definitely, by now, I'm hooked pretty much. There's not been a bad episode. There's a couple eye roll moments. But unlike Starfleet Academy, that was nothing but eye roll moments, these actors are settling into their characters. I really like where this is headed. And we're only halfway through the first season. Lift Us Where Suffering Cannot Reach. A very TOS title. And a good morality tale. So in this one, the Enterprise rescues a small ship that was being attacked to find out that one of Pike's old flames is on board. She is protecting a child en route to his home world. Of course, there's something not quite right about this situation. So my biggest question here, though, is why is Pike cheating on his girlfriend? I mean, here they're kissing, but later they show them in bed together after sex. I mean, that's the implication. So does Pike and Battelle, is that his girlfriend's last name? Maybe they're swingers? I don't know, but this jumped out at me. I was like, wait, it's just in the first episode, he's got a live-in girlfriend. Maybe not live-in, maybe she's a captain of a ship. But They were together in the first episode. They didn't break up. And here he is swapping spit with somebody else. Now, something that really jumped out at me was when the boy's father, I forget, protector, wants to save him, hide him from being called to his responsibility. So the father beams him away somewhere. Beams him away into a storage container. This is a hallway on the Enterprise littered with crates and boxes. What? That would not happen. Hallways would not be polluted like this. If he was beaming the kid into a crate, that would be in the cargo hold. I didn't understand this at all. This was really stupid. Ultimately, though, this is a really good morality tale. Sacrifice one child for the good of all, or let your society flounder and let more than one child suffer. These are the tough questions TOS used to tackle, and I'm glad to see these questions are coming up here on this show as well. We're up to Season 1, Episode 7, The Serene Squall. Now, this episode starts off with the Enterprise being taken over, boarded by a bunch of dumb space pirates. It makes our crew look like a bunch of idiots. So the Enterprise got taken over far too easily. It didn't sit well with me. Stupid. During this episode, we also have Spock creating a ruse and kissing Chapel in front of T'Pring. So that may have started a spark, and they'll come back to that in future episodes. There were a couple more layers of duplicity, stupidity, and double-crossing, but I do like the tie-in to Star Trek V. Yes, I like Star Trek V. I got the poster right there. That's my only Star Trek poster. I wish I had more. Actually, I could just buy some, but I got that back when it was out in theaters in 88, 9, somewhere around there. So yeah, I love this, but now it's been 2 more seasons and we haven't circled back to Sybok, so more Sybok. Also, Uhura was mysteriously absent from this episode. Bring her back. She's a good actress and a good character. Here we are nearing the end of the first season. This is episode 8, The Elysian Kingdom. Not to be confused with Ghosts of Illyria. Illyria. Things can get confusing, but this whole episode was kind of confusing and I really wasn't a fan of it. First, I thought it was really stupid that the doctor is using a pistol and stamen to crush ingredients to try to find a cure for his daughter. Then, with no fanfare, all of a sudden this episode turns into a flight of fancy. It's far too early in the series to be doing crazy, wacky shit like this. We need more time to know our characters in order to put them into different character roles so that we can see the juxtaposition of that. So I didn't like this whole setup at all. And if the doctor was hallucinating this medieval knights and kings and stuff, wouldn't it be in a castle? Why are they redressing the Enterprise? I didn't like that aspect of it at all. It's dumb. Also, they were too far deep into the lore of this book, The Kingdom of Elysia. Elysian. And you know where that's from? Deep Space Nine. Yep, the episode where Sisko goes back in time and becomes an author. They mentioned this book. This is the book Ben wrote in the, 30s or 40s? But it's not an actual book. So we as the audience don't understand the characters in the book's relationships to each other. Now they're using our crew, Pike and La'an and Una, in all these various roles. Spock was pretty funny in this. But since we don't have any frame of reference as to what the book is about, it's just a lot of missed opportunity. They should have, I know it's probably cost prohibitive, but if they had put our crew into the roles of the Wizard of Oz or some other iconic book or movie that we, the audience, know of, then it would be funnier and resonate more. But I will say Anson Mount was having way too much fun hamming it up in this episode, and that's the one good aspect of this episode. Well, that and the fact that they got rid of the boat anchor kid. I didn't like the kid being in the transporter buffer, and so now her story is complete and the Doctor can move on. Episode 9, All Those Who Wander. This is straight up them remaking Alien. Right down to the chest bursters and the Newt character. And it looks like they're positioning the Gorn to be the big bad guy for this whole series. But, there's a huge discrepancy between the slow, lumbering Gorn of old to this new, very alien-esque type Gorn creature. I think it would have been easy to make a CG version of this that's as mobile as a human, and maybe not have. I mean, these look like totally different species. It's the Klingon forehead problem, the KFP. But this episode was shot really well, very cinematic angles and lighting, and it was pretty gripping. I actually really dug this episode, aside from the overt alien-esqueness of it. I was surprised, though, that they killed off the first, the chief engineer in the first season here. So what did they... I don't get that. Why do you have plans to kill off a character right from the start? Oh, this season we're going to introduce you, but we're going to kill you. Why? And they're pushing the this relationship here. Season finale, episode 10, A Quality of Mercy. Now we're talking. Oh, look who's back together. Pike and his girlfriend. But this scene was really forced because they sit down to breakfast. I think he made her breakfast. And all she does is take 2 bites and says, oh, hey, I gotta go. So this whole interaction seemed really forced. I loved this great stinger right before the intro sequence of Pike in the TOS movie era jacket. This looked good. Now, I know what I said earlier. I think time travel crystals are a really bad idea. But they allow this episode to have a future Pike go back in time to inform current Pike that he should not warn the young future cadets about his vision of the future. A future in which the cadets die. And that's a lot of usage of the word future. Doing so will lead to worse things in the galaxy. So this is actually a good use of the time crystals, but that still leaves them open to misuse by the writers in the future. I thought they were introducing old James T here awfully early, even though it was the last episode of the first season. I didn't think they would introduce him until maybe the last season, but he adds a lot. I do like Paul Wesley's portrayal. He didn't go full Shatner. He made Kirk his own, and that's a good thing. And actually, what I hope this series segues or transitions into Star Trek the early years, when Kirk and Spock and the crew are... We only saw 3 of their 5-year mission, so let's see more of Kirk and Spock soon, I hope. But, I thought in terms of this series, he was just introduced pretty early. Now, I do love how they mimicked the Romulan reveal from TOS, because this is basically that same episode. But since Pike changed the timeline, it's happening at a different time and with different circumstances. So Pike is screwed up. But I do like the reveal, the way that it harkens back to the TOS episode. At one point in this episode, Kirk takes a shuttle and it goes to warp. But shuttles did not have warp capability in the TOS era. So that's a discrepancy. But he does return. I like his gambit to come back with all the little drone mining ships, because the Romulans don't know that these aren't warships. So, that's good old Jimmy Boy doing his gamble and and saving the day. So I did like that aspect of this episode. There were some minor timey-wimey complications, but overall, great season finale. So, in summation, I'm not presenting an argument to a court or anything, but this was a good first season. Really rock solid, lots to like, couple things that they got wrong, couple things that could need some tweaks or adjustments, but overall, really good. Some stumbles, some growing pains, but a rollicking good time that left me eager for season 2. As they say,
you take the good, you take the bad, you take them both, and there you have
Strange New Worlds. So, with that all being said, I gotta start rewatching season 2. See you then.